So I'm Sarah Gray, and I'm the Markets Director at the International Integrated Reporting Council, where I've been now for a year and a half, and I oversee some of our networks internationally, because there's interest in integrated thinking and integrated reporting in the academic community, among investors, of course among business, but also in the public sector. So it's about sort of joining the dots between some of those conversations and making sure that we can make progress and help others make progress with their integrated reporting. I'm really excited about what we've been seeing and hearing in the last year, because, really important people, the language of business has changed. There seems to be a sort of sea change emerging. And so we get people like Mark Carney, who's the Governor of the Bank of England. He's also the Chairman of the Financial Stability Board for the G20. And he's been talking about the tragedy of horizons. And really, it's all about the short-term perspective is really not doing us any favours, and we've got to look up at the longer-term horizon to be able to see what's coming over the hill and to really take account of those risks today, so that we don't get caught out and those risks hit us and our businesses are failing as a result. We're also hearing from people like Hillary Clinton, who we're expecting, or she's certainly a front runner to be the next president in the US. And she's talking about, let me have a look here, she's talking about the tyranny of quarterly capitalism, and it's distorting decision making, preventing long-term investment and the widest possible sharing of prosperity. And what's really interesting is she's calling for all sorts of reform and regulatory oversight to encourage this longer-term decision making. And you might expect that Wall Street wouldn't like that there would be a bit of a response to that. But actually, what we're seeing is investors and companies are actually seeing it for themselves. And in some cases, they are leading the charge on this agenda. So I think we're really seeing an understanding that people have, yes, they've got to take care of the short term and the medium term, but they've also got to look ahead at the longer term, because actually, institutional investors, sometimes their time frame is more like 30 years ahead, and businesses need to be able to be there in the future and adapt to what's changing. And I think what we're seeing really is that, that there is this shift to a longer term conversation. There's also a shift in terms of more inclusive capitalism. It's not just about financial capitalism, it's got to be a more inclusive kind of capitalism, and that links us to the behaviour within business. The behaviour changes and the governance within a business are so important. And what we're seeing is the third shift that the IIRC is hearing about and obviously supporting is that shift from sort of silo reporting, where different bits of information get reported up into a report, to more integrated reporting. And that's underpinning those other shifts in that sort of inclusive capitalism and the longer term perspective within the capital markets. So I think in South Africa, the framework has been out, the international framework for integrated reporting has been out for just a couple of years. And in South Africa, because of the King Code, the kind of movement towards integrated thinking and integrated reporting has been going on somewhat longer. So the rest of the world is and was looking to South Africa as real leaders in this space. And I think that continues to be the case. But it was interesting, there were a couple of elements coming out today of South Africa, and the rest of the world. And there are a couple of elements like being able to clearly communicate about the resources, or the capitals as we call them, that you rely on. That's something that companies need to be able to articulate more clearly. And also perhaps telling their value creation story, which is it's a fundamental concept in the framework. I think companies in South Africa do know what their value creation story is, and I think the issue is about being able to articulate it clearly. And in some other countries, perhaps because of regulation, like in the UK, which now requires a strategic report, they are articulating some of that more clearly elsewhere in the world. But I think South Africa we still see as leaders in integrated reporting because the whole market is doing it. In other markets, there may be just a handful of good examples. And as we saw today at this wonderful awards, there were tens of organisations receiving awards for really communicating their value creation story pretty well. I really think that the initiative Nkonki has taken by doing this research, not only with the JSE top 100 companies, but also in the public sector, it is really important because and I think it's important not just in South Africa but around the world, because it is by identifying those leading practices that others can see what's being done. They can see some of the benefits that come from that, and they can start to emulate those examples. So I really take my hat off to them. I think these kinds of awards are going on in countries around the world, and they are making a difference in the market and sort of incentivizing people to push ahead and make progress.